Okay, welcome to all my students. This is the second last presentation that I'm going to do. This is from the class that was supposed to have been on Thursday, March 19th. First of all, I hope you all are doing well. This has been a really strange period of time, so I hope everyone's healthy and doing well and doing whatever it takes to get through this period. We're going to talk about marketing of local food today. And I will be spending some time assigning the last assignments before the end of the semester. Once I get done with all this, I'll talk a little bit about how we move forward and how we actually finish the class, okay? So today I am going to give you a reminder. Please keep working on all the assignments. You can hand them in until the last day of classes, which is we were supposed to have our final exam on April 23rd. That final exam is going to be virtual. I haven't worked out quite all the details yet, but that's the last day that you can also hand in all your other assignments. Please email me if you have any questions. We're going to be talking today about marketing both local foods in general and also local food restaurant meals. I was supposed to have had a guest speaker from Food Dance, and even after things got all crazy, I figured out how to use Google Voice and record a phone conversation, but I haven't been able to get in touch with her, so you'll just be stuck with me doing everything. Then we're going to talk about, I have these slightly wrong order. First, I'm going to talk about the part of the local food meal that has a marketing component. There are two parts to that assignment. I'll talk about those. And then I will talk about the final extra credit worksheet, which has a lot to do with this presentation. So hopefully you got the email from me about this presentation, because if you're looking at it, you got the link, and you were able to either print out or have a copy handy of the extra credit worksheet so you can actually work on that while we're doing the presentation. Okay, so let's get going. So marketing, what's being accomplished? This is more or less a review. We've all grown up with marketing as a big part of our lives. We see it all the time, whether we're watching TV, listening to the radio, streaming things, if we're going to a free streaming service, in magazines. Basically, marketing is everywhere. But what is being accomplished from the perspective of the person or the organization that's putting that marketing out? Marketing is the action or business of promoting and selling products and services, including market research and advertising. So why do we need to do marketing? Let's say you're a restaurant. Why do you need marketing? Hopefully this is fairly obvious. You need to market yourself to the consuming public so that you get people coming into your restaurant and buying your meals, sitting down and having a nice meal, and because that's how you stay in business. In essence, marketing is to sell existing products. It is to satisfy existing needs. And most importantly, I think, at least for marketing people, it's to create new needs. If we were satisfied with exactly what we have, we wouldn't be interested in going and finding new restaurants, in buying new gadgets, in going new places. So it's creating new products and new needs. So the question we have for today is, how might the marketing of local foods or restaurant meals made from local foods differ from the foods that a restaurant might serve that come from the conventional food chain. So that's what we're going to be answering during this presentation. So this is just a visual representation of what the actual food might look like. That's different from either a conventional food system. Even if it's organic, it still would come to the restaurant as in the form of a food service type pack, an A10 can if it's tomatoes or something like that. Whereas if it's a local restaurant using local foods, whether they have fresh, ripe, raw tomatoes, or for example, if they buy surplus quantities of tomatoes at the farmer's market when they're in season and relatively inexpensive, they might can their own tomatoes so that they have them available all year. So how does this really differ? When you're talking about from the perspective of the consumer, the person who's sitting down to eat that meal, it may be hard for them to discern what the difference is. They may eat the meal made with fresh tomatoes or home canned local tomatoes and taste a difference, but they don't know what that difference is. And that's where the marketing comes in. So the marketing of it is telling the story of that food product. Marketing directly to consumer. I just read that and it doesn't quite make sense. But anyway, marketing directly to the consuming public when it comes to a restaurant meal, you have a few difficulties or challenges that, for example, a restaurant chain, whether it's McDonald's or an Applebee's or whatever it is not going to have. First of all, you've got a local audience and you've got seasonal products. So you're distinguishing yourself, which as someone who only has those seasonal products, which on the surface may look to be a disadvantage. And that's where the story comes in. You're going to change that story so that the audience considers it a benefit and not a challenge. So getting your information to the audience, you're going to use a variety of different methods than a chain might use. You're going to be engaging with your farmers directly. You might do cooking demos at farmers markets, feature local foods and farmers on the menus, and more. So there's all kinds of ways that you can do it that differentiate a local food-based restaurant from a restaurant that's only getting their food from the conventional supply chain. So some of the things you need to think about is why we would need to market products for local foods in restaurants. Some of the reasons can be that it's possible that it's more expensive. So you have to give those customers a reason to believe that it's a benefit that it costs slightly more. It's seasonal, so you're explaining in your story, in your marketing, why it's better to have asparagus that's grown here in Michigan or Indiana and have it only available from late May to late June. So why is that a benefit? You're saying that it's maybe fresher. Excuse me. Okay, it's fresher. It can be more nutritious. It's allowed to ripen on the vine, so it's got all of those beneficial nutrients that ripening on the vine provides. It has fewer food miles incorporated into it, and it's helping the local economy. So those are all the reasons why local food may be better for the restaurant And all of that needs to come into the story that you're telling your customers through your advertising. Who would the customers be for this food? And are they different customers from any other restaurant? They're going to be people who are interested in the food they eat. They will probably be interested in where the food comes from. And so that and other things are what you as a marketer of that local food need to figure out and put it into the your marketing plan. What would the best ways be to market these items? What's the best way to reach customers? That's the perennial question of marketing anything these days. And how you do that is going to basically determine the success or failure of not only your marketing plan, but also your restaurant. So next, I'm going to go through a series of steps that are involved in a marketing campaign. And it's just to give you, it's mostly to give you the knowledge that marketing isn't just something you do once. You have to promote yourself, see how that worked, and then promote yourself again in order to continue getting those new customers. I'd like you to pay attention to these steps that I'm going to go through so that you can fill in the extra credit worksheet. If you have it already printed out, fantastic. So creating a marketing campaign. A marketing campaign has a life cycle, and it's also a circle, because you start it, and then when you get to the end of it, you're going to start all over again. And these are the main steps to a marketing campaign. So first of all, you're going to be figuring out what your goal is. It's going to be really difficult to focus whatever your marketing materials are if you don't have a goal. For us, with the assignments that are linked to this presentation, our goal is to get lots of people to come to our restaurant's 80% local food meal. So that's what we're trying to achieve. Some other things that you might want to achieve through a marketing campaign having to do with local food could be community education. Let's say your restaurant has gone through a changeover in management or in philosophy. You're going to be educating your existing customers and trying to find new customers by telling them what that change has been. You've decided, because you had this fantastic epiphany, you took a class at KDCC about sustainable food systems, and you've decided that your goal is to provide 20% of the food served in the restaurant as local food, and have one 80% local food meal served each season. So you're creating awareness on that. You're also might be trying to determine if a product is viable. You might have a new recipe that you want to promote, or you want to make that's based on some local food, and you don't know whether anybody's going to want it. So how are you going to not only get the word out to get enough people to come to the restaurant to know you have this new item, and then what are you going to do with that information? Is there a problem you're trying to solve? In our case, how are we going to differentiate the local food that we serve from the rest of the food that we serve and from the food that other restaurants might be serving? Another part of the goal is also your time frame. When do you actually start promoting your local food meal? 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before, a month before, a whole season before? That's going to impact how you go about your campaign. Identify your audience. Now, your audience will depend on the type of restaurant you have, and also the type of food that you're producing. How old are they? Does the age of the purchaser even matter? In some cases it can, because if you're a more high-end restaurant, you're looking for people who can actually afford to come and pay the price that you're asking for the meal. Identifying your audience helps you figure out what type of creative expression your ads are going to have, how to implement them, and what the best message is. Where do the people live? Is geography a limiting factor? Is your restaurant a draw from a very large geographic area, or is it a much smaller area? That's going to determine what modes of advertising you use, how far out you have to go in order to reach those potential customers and things like that. Are there other aspects of potential customers' lifestyles that are going to affect how you portray your ads? So all of those things are questions that you have to ask yourself when you're figuring out who your audience is. Okay, the next step is to develop your campaign creative. Or what are your ads going to look like? What are they going to sound like? What pictures are you going to have? So how can you present your campaign in a way that people will take notice? Now, how many of you have heard an ad and like 6 months later, it'll come to you out of the blue, but you don't remember what the item was that they were selling? Well, that can be a very creative ad, but it's not actually producing the results you want. So you want people to notice it, but you also want them to remember what the subject of the ad was. What are you trying to get them to remember? And in this case, we want them to come to our restaurant and have our 80% local food meal. What's the overall look and feel of the campaign? Often a advertising campaign will have components on a broad range of media. So it might have print ads, it might have TV ads, it might have a radio spot, it'll have social media spots. Is there some theme that goes all the way through it? One thing you want to remember is that if it's something brand new to people, most of the time it takes people 3 times hearing a very similar message in order for it to really sink into their brain and have them remember it. So you want to have some sort of overall look and feel to the campaign so that in the potential customer's brains, they relate what they saw on their social media to the billboard they saw. And okay, that's the second time they've heard about it. They're that much closer to remembering it when the time comes to make the reservations. You want to have a catchy tagline. And also you have to remember what important content you need to have. You don't want to have somebody remember that, oh, there's this cool restaurant that has this 80% local food meal and they're serving this and it's on this date, but not remember the restaurant. So you want the copy to be the copy of the design and the photographs all to get the customer to remember the important information at the end. So here are a few creative ideas. Now, they're not to do with food. They're just to reinforce the idea that catchy and creative doesn't have to have a lot of components and be real fancy. So how many of you grew up putting together Legos? One thing that I always thought for example, when my kids were growing up, is that a lot of the kits that you get from Lego, it's like they took all the creativity out of it. And what you really need was just the bare blocks to put things together. And for example, that dinosaur, it looks like a dinosaur. And if you're really in the moment and feeling creative, then that's all it needs to have. And that is saying imagination without saying it, which is that ad's tagline. And here's another one. It's a library campaign, and their tagline was "Become someone else." And in this, we don't see the people's faces. All we see are the faces of the characters in a book. And everybody has read a book where they immerse themselves into the book and almost forgot who they were. And that's the mark of a really good ad. So it reminds people that you can become someone else. So those are the kinds of ideas that they get right to the point very quickly, but very succinctly. You don't have to use a lot of words. You don't have to use a lot of fancy images or anything. So then you determine your implementation strategy. How are you going to get the message out? Through what channels? How many of those channels are you going to use? What's your time frame? You already know your time frame because you figured that out back in the goals. And so you're going to have this strategy all set. And you want to have the whole strategy set before you implement anything so that you're not forgetting things. Finally, your strategy is going to include social media: Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, paid advertising. A lot of this will determine which social media platforms you use. And remember, there's also becoming to be more and more demographic information about which social media platforms are more likely to be used with which age groups. So keep that in mind when you're developing your apps. All the different types of strategies that you can use, everything from video and TV. That is definitely still used now, although it's a little bit harder to do it on a local level and get broad coverage. Websites, digital ads. We've got those websites, offer signups so that people can keep informed. That's going to keep your existing customers coming back. Print media, there's always going to be opportunities to use print media, whether it's in relevant publications. Around here, you could put ads in Edible Michiana. I don't think we have an edible magazine in this part of Michigan, but we're kind of right on the edge of the Edible Michiana. Brochures and flyers and posters, those are still effective. Direct mail, especially if you have a nice size mailing list. You can have booths at festivals, host an event. Okay, I'm back. I just had a bit of a coughing fit. It's not COVID-19. I just have spring allergies. So the last part on this slide that I wanted to talk about is partnering with other businesses and cross promotions. This is a really important aspect, especially when we're talking about making those connections with farmers and incorporating their stories into our stories about how we promote the local food. If, for example, you're one of the farmers that you're getting the food from for your local food meal is a vendor at the farmers market, print up promotional flyers for them to hand out at the farmers market to expand the number of people you're attracting to your local food meal. So all of those things. Finally, we have the actual launch. And that's, as I said before, you want to have everything ready in your campaign so that you know what days you're going to be sending out, what bits of marketing information, so that you have all your bases covered. And as many people as possible are going to know about your local food meal. So once you've had your meal, how are you going to tell whether it's successful? Well, the first thing is, did you actually sell out your local food meal, or did you have a great response to a new menu item that's highlighting asparagus in the spring? So after the campaign has launched, you're going to first allow time for effects to happen. Um, how are you going to determine the effectiveness? Was there an increase in sales? Did the meal sell out? Did you reach your expectations on the new menu item? Things like that. Were there inquiries about products? And here's where part of the marketing assignment for our local food meal has you making a take-home menu that a person coming to the meal is going to get. So they have a memory of the meal that they had, but it also kind of triggers them to perhaps talk to their friends about it. You know, I had this great meal at such and such a restaurant, and this is one of the dishes that we had, and it was fantastic. You really ought to think about going to it. So if you have people calling up the restaurant saying, I want to know when your next local food meal is because so and so said it was a fantastic night. Those are the kinds of things that you're going to want to listen to. You can have people do surveys. Which part of the meal was it best? Was it at the right time? Was the day of the week okay? And stuff like that. So think about other ways that you can gauge whether your marketing was successful. Then that gets us back to the top of the circle where you're going to be figuring out what to do next. So now I'm going to talk about the local food meal assignment. I think today was the first day we've been able to open up the windows, and maybe I'm feeling some allergies. Anyway, the last part of the local food meal assignment that we're going to be able to accomplish, since we're never going to have in-person classes again, is the marketing portion. That consists of a total of 50 points and has 2 different components worth 25 points each. Here's the scenario. You own a restaurant. You are hosting an 80% local food meal, and you want to encourage your customers to come to the meal. So how do I get the word out? The meal is going to be on April 30th at your restaurant at 7 p.m. So remember I said earlier that you want relevant information to be part of the ads that you send out. You already have close relationships with the farmers providing the ingredients. So you want to highlight them, their farms, the courses in the meal to make your story, to make it compelling for customers to come and see. Social media ad. Okay, this is a picture of a local food meal that my partner and I had a couple years ago. It's a spring meal that has smoked brisket, snow peas, and sauteed walking onion tops. Most of it was at least 80% local, although our rice wasn't. So in your ad, and it doesn't have to be fancy, I want you to use some creative juices to make it look appealing. I can't say that mine is. My creativity is actually in other areas. But anyway, so you want to have when and where is the meal. Give your restaurant a name. Mine is Natural Cycles Farm Restaurant because our farm's name is Natural Cycles Farm. Highlight the course that your group was chosen to have made at our local food meal. Highlight some of the ingredients, the local ones. Highlight the farms where you get the ingredients and a bit of your story. You can include a picture of the farm or the food. The text is supposed to encourage a potential customer. And it's a social media ad, so you want to get the point across quickly. In this example ad, I probably used too many words, including a link to, and it doesn't have to be a working link, but just a link to for the viewer to get more information. So you want to grab them with like the picture or a short bit of text, anything like that. When you're making this, it doesn't have to be actually a social media snapshot. If you have the ability to use Instagram or Facebook to create something like this, by all means do it. It can be just, I think I made this in Paint and uploaded the picture and put in the text. So just try to find a creative way to try to grab those customers. So that's the first part. That's worth 25 points. The second is that I don't have a picture of this, is you want to have a keepsake menu. Create a single course menu for your meal to include the restaurant name, the time and date for the meal, name of the dish, ingredients of the dish. You don't have to put all the ingredients. The idea is to highlight the local ingredients and tell a bit of your story. Remember, the object of this keepsake menu in our pretend situation is to intrigue that customer enough so that they'll go home and tell other people about it. So it's not just a keepsake, it's also a bit of marketing. Okay, so add whatever you think is going to add excitement for your customer. Finally, I've included in the email where you got the link to this presentation, the final extra credit assignment. That's worth 10 points. First two columns is just basically reviewing the steps of a marketing campaign. If you go back earlier into this presentation, you can find the names of the different steps of the marketing campaign. And then I want you to write down a description or a definition. Please try to use your own words and not exactly as it is written on the page. Every time you write something in your own words, you have a better chance of remembering it. In the final column, think about some ideas for what you'd do for that particular step of the marketing campaign if you were creating a marketing campaign for your group's 3-course meal in your own restaurant. Just to start having you think about how you go about marketing food that you're producing. The important part of the marketing idea is that you guys are all training to be chefs, so you know that you can cook, but you also have to figure out all the other components of running your business, and marketing is an extremely important one. Okay, finally, I just have a few more words about how we're going to wrap up this semester and get you on to your next semester, which I believe they're starting out virtually as well. So hopefully this whole event will not last the entire summer. Anyway, what I'm going to be doing is I will be sending each of you another email, and it will have a list of your outstanding assignments. Remember, I will accept everything you hand in up until the end of the semester on April 23rd. And I really want you to pass this class, so I'm grading them in a way to give you the maximum number of points. I will be doing one more presentation like this where I go through an overview of the course, what you should expect to have on the final exam with some example questions. The example questions are not going to be the same ones that are on the exam, but it'll give you an idea of what I'm hoping for you to take out of this class. As far as the final exam itself, I have to figure out a way to get the exam to you and then get it back. I know that Moodle has some possible ways to do it, so I will be getting information to you about how it is going to happen. It will be available no later than April 23rd. So I also want to say thank you to all of you who kept up with this class, and I hope you walk away with some beneficial learnings from it. And if you're at the market this summer, stop and say hello. We plan to be there. See you later, guys.